The Dharma expressed as formal philosophy is Madhyamaka, the middle way as middlemost. That's what it means. You put Madhyamaka into a Sanskrit dictionary, you get middlemost. Along with the great literature of the Prajnaparamita Sutras and so on, is all recorded in Sanskrit. So if you're a Mahayanist, as I am, you're not getting far without Sanskrit. So my observations about Sanskrit earlier on are to do with sort of being a fairly serious Mahayanist. You've got to get to grips with the language in which it's written. Yeah. So, a bit of a timeline. Today, Sanskrit is classified within the Indo-Aryan branch of the Indo-European languages. Vedic Sanskrit gives way to Classical Sanskrit around about 6 to 4 BCE, before the Common Era. So broadly around the time of the Buddha, maybe the 5th century BCE. At this time, the Prakrits also become distinctive, which means that they come out of prehistory into some sort of record. We don't know what happened before that. There is supposed to be something called the Pi, the Proto-Indo-European. No one knows what that is, but it would be pretty similar to a very early version of Vedic Sanskrit, we reckon. And nearly all the languages of Western Europe, basically if you leave out Finland, because that's got a Russian influence, that's why it's got 24 cases in the language and all sorts of... You talk to a Finn about their language, yeah, you'd be there all night. Are derived from this, yeah? An astonishing degree of confluence, where you see all that variety, but the grammatical structures are very similar. So, Classical Sanskrit is codified and standardized by one of the greatest of grammarians, Panini. That's not the Italian cheese sandwich. In the most comprehensive of ancient grammars called the Ashtadhyayi, or Ashta Sanskrit for 8 Dhyayi, chapter 8 chapters. Panini's systematization is a vast cultural achievement. Its internal coherence is considered comparable to anything in modern computer coding. Yeah? People still look at Panini and go, whoa, that's very systematic. You know, and this is occurring between the 6th and the 4th centuries, before the Common Era. It's as old as the Buddha, if you will. All modern Indic languages are descended from Sanskrit via a Prakrit. So there's that relationship again. Yeah? They're not sealed off from each other. Lacking in a tested native script, Sanskrit has been recorded in various languages. From around 1000 in the Common Era, it becomes standardized in the Devanagari script, which you're probably quite familiar with. You know what modern Hindi looks like when it's written. Yeah, those wonderful squiggles. And I've managed to master that Abugida or alphabet. It's taken a little while. I can write that now, which my missus was very impressed by. As well she might be, I suppose. So that's the written version of it. Now, we're all sitting here tonight because of British imperialism. Now, why do I say that? As early as 1786, Sir William Jones, a High Court judge in Calcutta, noticed Sanskrit. In his now famous 3rd anniversary discourse to the Asiatic Society of Bengal, he kicked off the entire field of historical linguistics and Indo-European studies. Not what he meant to do, but that's what he did in effect. Dharma always finds a way, and this is where Western Buddhism starts, because this is where the West begins to take Indian culture seriously. Jones, a classically educated pillar of the English colonial establishment, describes the wonderful structure of Sanskrit. Again, direct quote, more perfect than the Greek, more copious than the Latin, and more exquisitely refined than either. And he has the nous to see that they can only have common ancestry. It's rare indeed for the opinions of a colonial administrator not to be swiftly exposed and rendered ridiculous by history, but to this day, the insights of Sir William Jones are presented with respect in our universities. They're ideas that really stuck there. As the politics of culture, this is absolutely massive. In one of the finest ironies of history, British imperialism brings home the understanding that the supposedly absolute foundations of Western civilization in the Mediterranean basin, in Greek, Latin, and the Abrahamic religions have foundations and origins outside the geography and thought of Europe. A very, very subversive idea. It's taken to probably the Second World War in the late 20th century for those ideas to really start to bite. But it starts in India as early as 1786. Slowly but inexorably, the invaders begin to be invaded. If this doesn't convince you that history is a dialectical process, then I guess nothing will. So, why take a closer look at Sanskrit? My own answer is, in my last talk, I presented some of my recently published thinking on applying Buddhist Madhyamaka philosophy to serious contemporary issues. My next steps involve now involves seeking out a PhD supervisor so that in Deven's words, the ideas can be tested upon the anvil of scholarship. Yeah, okay. Deven advised me to get to grips with Sanskrit in order to make the PhD proposal more credible, and that's pretty much what I did. Attempting to teach myself from books, as I did with the Pali, swiftly taught me one important lesson. I was going nowhere much without a tutor. So originally, I enrolled part-time online with SOAS, that's the School of Oriental and African Studies at the University of London. And of course, that's when everybody suddenly was Zooming. You know, so there was an awful lot of a big offer there. I now work online with two different online tutors. Anyone here know Nick Kroll? Yeah? Yeah, well, I share both my Sanskrit tutors with Nick Kroll's Uncle Jim. He used to be a QC, now he's a KC, of course. Wonderful man. Can't say too many nice things about Jim Adjaros. Now, I'm now in my third year, and I've ascended to the dizzy heights of pre-intermediate. Pre-intermediate. Right. That alone should give you some idea of just how big this mountain is. It's Maha. So, one or two little examples of learning points before we get into the Heart Sutra. I want to tell you about the root vrut. Yeah? Now, you know, when you discover that in Sanskrit, R is a vowel, that's one of the sort of first points where you think, uh-oh. So, vrut is V, R with a dot under it, T. Yeah? And put a little root sign on it. Yeah? Sanskrit is based on roots, and these are foundational elements from which nouns and verbs and so on are formed. So you usually ask, what's the root of that? And you get something which is more fundamental even than a noun or a verb form. Vrut is, I mention it to you because it's one among a huge number of terms which can be located in English. Vrut is, as they say, cognate with the English vortex, for example, okay, straight through. So turning round and round, which should grab the attention of Buddhists, look up vrut in a Sanskrit dictionary and you'll find a range of meanings. And here's the spread I've been talking about, yeah? To turn around, to revolve, to roll, to move, to proceed, to be, to live, to act, to conduct oneself, to follow a course of action, to become. Right from just turning to becoming. Yeah? Right within the span of that word. Really all according to context. And yet I have this sense in Sanskrit that those meanings are not so much alternatives, just kind of stacked in a rather, you know, in a way of talking about things which is probably quite deep. Deeper than, you know, it's more poetic, I think. You know, that when you deal with poetry, you're used to the idea that there's some depth in the meaning of the text. With Sanskrit, that seems to be there all the time. The number of supposedly contemporary idioms which can be found in Sanskrit is astonishing as you investigate it. Here we see that "that's the way I roll" is an essentially ancient expression. No? And it reveals a distinctly Indian way of thinking. Existence is a process of rotation, going round and round and round. Now, Western teleologies are linear. Yeah? They tend to form progression from darkness to light, from, you know, being lost to being saved. Yeah? Christianity does that. Marxism does that. Yeah? But here is the distinctively circular teleology of India, which explains why the Buddha taught the endless round and its escape through turning a circle onto an upward path and making a spiral. The distinctively Indian way of looking at things. Sangha always encouraged the study of language because the ability to express ideas in more than one way tends to shake fixed view. And if Buddhists are about anything, it's about rattling fixed views. An old joke in linguistics goes then, well, the French called Daisy une vache, but we all know she's a cow, really? It should raise a laugh, but you never know. Another example of cultural perspective delivered through Sanskrit. Right? In English, you can go to a place or a person. There's no difference. Yeah? You can't do that in Sanskrit. You can go to a place. But to go to a person is to enter into their presence. Sentient beings are quite distinct from objects. Yeah? You go into the presence of another. You do not go to them because that would objectify them. This doesn't work. It can't be done. The mental space within Sanskrit is different. And partly I'm bringing my own Buddhist preconceptions in here, but I'm finding a lot of affinity, you know, when I look at the stuff. So if understanding even a little Sanskrit can shift perspective, what about applying that to the reading of a Dharma text, the Heart Sutra? So Here are the opening lines of the Heart Sutra in Sanskrit. Aryo avalokateshvaro bodhisattvo gambiram pranyaparamithaya charayam charamano vi avalokayati sma panchaskandams tamshka svabhava sunyan pashati sva. Okay, now the standard version we all know, which actually is based upon Roshi Philip Kapleau's version, I believe, which Sangha rather liked and popped it into his liturgy, is the Bodhisattva of compassion, when he meditated deeply, saw the emptiness of all 5 skandhas. Yeah, we all know that one fairly well, yeah. If you translate it rather more literally, you get something a bit like this, and there are lots of ways of doing this. The noble Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, engaging in the profound practice of the perfection of wisdom, looks down and in all truth sees 5 skandhas quite certainly empty of inherent existence. Let's investigate further. What's happening with those terms Aryo Avalokiteshvaro and Vi Avalokayati? Avalokiteshvaro is the name of the Bodhisattva. The final O is the result of a complex grammatical change known as sandhi, which reveals the spoken nature of Sanskrit. Word inflections and wordings often change to make it more speakable, and it reminds you forcibly that you're dealing with a language of recitation rather than a written script primarily. Yeah, it's the bane of all students, because just when you think you know the words, the endings change. And the endings are changing anyway because of inflection. The original then is Aryo Avalokiteshvaraha. That aha ending is in the masculine nominative singular, so he's the subject of the sentence. So right, you know that's all about him. He's the subject, yeah? And Vya Avalokiyati is the active verb, and that tells us what the Bodhisattva is doing. Okay? It's in the present tense. Normally translated as he looked down and saw the 5 skandhas, right? It actually says he looks down and sees, or something a bit like that. It's in the present tense. Yeah. That pashyati later on in the passage also confirms this. It's in the present, from the distinctive root pash, which occurs only in the present, because unusually the past tenses for this verb use an entirely different form, drush. Okay? So you don't know. You know, the point about that is that it's in a distinctively present form. So far, I can't find anyone else who's translating this Heart Sutra in the present tense. Yeah, I'm still looking for that, but the verbs are present. You can ask my Sanskrit tutor about it again. It is legitimate to read this passage in a vivid present tense, much more immediate in its impact than in the past tense. And the reading I'm going to suggest to you, that presentness and the now of it, right, is really quite important. Now, some of the things I'm going to say next are in part derived from the work of Jayarava, one of the order's Sanskrit scholars, and a specialist in the critical interpretation of the Heart Sutra. Jayarava is particularly concerned to move our understanding beyond the original paradigm established by Edward Conzer, which influenced Sangha. Jayarava can be found online. He's rather prolific. I do recommend him. The guy's got a thing about the Heart Sutra, and he's rather good. I'd also recommend that you read Shradhapa's note on the translation, which introduces Sangharakshita's wisdom beyond words in the latest edition of the complete works, because that's a very interesting little bit of writing indeed. Shradhapa concludes that Sangharakshita's analysis of the Heart Sutra has passed through the forensic furnace of recent scholarship in fairly good order. So when it comes to the exposition of Dharma, Sangharakshita remains a safe bet. The more scholarship I've done, the more I've thought, Sangharakshita got that right, actually. Yeah? You don't see him knocked over, overturned, or significantly reinterpreted, even when there would be an excuse, such as using the only translations available in the 1940s, that sort of thing. So he does keep coming through, in my experience. Yeah. Now let's deconstruct Avalokiteshvara. Arya Avalokiteshvara is familiarly translated as the Lord who looks down, and they put in compassion in brackets because they don't have a term for in compassion, so they just pop that in brackets. It's not in the text. Though he is the Bodhisattva of supreme compassion, so it's not wrong, but it's a little bit naughty in terms of translation. There are 4 components there in the word: Arya, Ava, Lokita, and Ishvara. Yeah? So it's one of these Sanskrit compounds. It's sometimes best with Sanskrit to do things backwards and start from the end. So, first of all, the Ishvara. Now, as a noun, that means a lord or a prince. Yeah? As an adjective, it means capable or able to do. So an Ishvara is one who can get things done, make things happen. So the definition of power in Sanskrit is the ability to make stuff happen. Pretty straightforward, that, yeah? Lokita as a noun means looking at and beholding. Comes from the root look, to see, behold, or perceive. And of course, it's cognate with the English look. Same word. Yeah? Very, very similar. Ava is a prefix whose simple meaning is down. However, it's a transformative prefix. Prefix comes in three flavours in Sanskrit. They're either pleonastic, which means they do nothing. I love the word pleonastic because it means nothing happens. It's a great big technical word for nothing at all happens. Then they sometimes reverse things. So from go to come. Yeah. So gam, pratigam. Gam is to go, pratigam is to come, to return. Agam is to come rather than to go. So they have quite simple effects. But some of them really change things dramatically. And ava is one of those. It has a big impact. Okay? And the combination verb avalok shows an extension and an intensification of meaning from see into this intensified form, look upon, behold, observe, notice. Yeah? Look down then becomes look down to investigate closely, forensically examine, have a really good look. Yeah? In that form. And arya could be adjective or noun. It's in a compound, so it's not clear which. Classical Sanskrit situation. But as an adjective, it means true, devoted, dear, or excellent. As a noun, it means noble or lord. So, we don't have too many problems with the term. So, you could translate Avalokiteshvara plausibly as the powerful practitioner who observes with close and alert attention. And I've left all the cosmology and the looking down from heaven and all the rest of it out of that. Yeah? Because we can all observe with close and alert attention and make ourselves more powerful practitioners. So I think I'm trying to not bring it down so much as stretch it from up there to down here as well. So what's he doing? The verb vi avalokayati holds further clues. Vi is another intensifying prefix. There are intensifiers all over this. It adds emphasis to the term in this particular case. It does a lot of other things as well. But vi is working like that in this case. Avalokayati has got that extra I in it, the AY, and it's a form of the verb which further intensifies and adds emphasis. Again, more emphasis, meaning not only to look closely, but to recognize and to know. So continuously you've got this big emphasis on absolutely focused attention, investigation and consideration. Yeah? All of which leaves us with a new perspective on Avalokiteshvara and his actions in the form of the Avalokayati. Whilst he may be gazing down in compassion from some remote heavenly realm, there's ample justification for also seeing him within the Heart Sutra as a down-to-earth practitioner of Vipassana insight meditation. Vipassana meaning right knowledge. Yeah? Insight meditation, caught in a moment of breakthrough realization as the inherent emptiness of the five skandhas and its full implications dawned upon him. That's the explosion. Yeah? That's what the sutra is trying to suggest, I think. Amongst other things, it is capturing a moment. The Heart Sutra is only a sacred text because it is not a sacred text, but a dramatic depiction of an explosion of liberation in direct experience. Okay, let's have a look at the mantra. There's much more I could say about this, but I thought I'd go for the mantra as well. I thought I'd go for the name, what he's actually doing in the sutra, and also some words about the mantra. So there's a few dizzying thoughts about what might be going on there. Well, we all know it's gate, gate, para sam, gate, bodhi, svaha, right? Familiar as chips, we all know that one. It's not usually translated. But should it be, it normally comes out as something a bit like gone, gone, gone beyond, gone altogether beyond, behold, perfect enlightenment. Yeah? Which means that you're here and it's over there. You don't need me to point out to you that there's something dualistic about that. Right? So how can it be perfect enlightenment if it's over there? How are you going to deal with that? The scholar Kengo Harimoto has recently published a radical interpretation of the mantra, and he does not propose to overturn existing interpretations, but rather to posit additional possibilities. He's very into the idea that the Heart Sutra means a lot of things, and that you really ought to be conversant with a lot of them and hold all that ambiguity and complexity. So, to quote Harimoto, what does the whole mantra mean? No doubt that the mantra is intentionally ambiguous. I believe that it is composed in such a way that multiple interpretations are possible. The whole point of the mantra is that it allows a wide range of understandings, and his interpretation is a humdinger. Without going into the intricacies of the vocatives and imperatives within his proposed grammatical reading, he makes a credible case for rendering and translating the mantra as follows. Gate, agate, paragate, aparasamgate, bodhisvaha. Now those are prefixes and negations. And so we get, I'm going to go through this twice, so don't worry if you don't get it the first time. Gone, not gone. Gone and not gone, having reached both ends. Not gone and not gone, having not reached either end. Awaken, may a blessing rest upon it. So, gate, gone, agate, not gone. Paragate, gone and not gone, having reached both ends. Aparasamgate, not gone and not gone, having not reached either end. Bodhi, awaken, an imperative, an invocation to Prajnaparamita as a goddess and to the practitioner as well. Wake up. And svaha, may a blessing rest upon it. That's the only bit he hasn't taken to the cleaners, basically, in this translation. It's impeccably Buddhist. Because any student of Nagarjuna's dialectical logic and the Mula Madhyamakarika will instantly notice the echo of Madhyamaka paradox. Yeah? It is not, neither and both. Yeah? What Nagarjuna does as a philosopher is to demonstrate that the classic tetralemma of logic, in which a thing is either A or B not A, both A and B, and neither A nor B, that all of those are simultaneously true, and that reality cannot be confined within any of them. So that's called the refutation of the Chatty, and it's a very big deal in Nagarjuna, and you see that in the Heart Sutra. So what this is saying is, you're gone, you're not gone, you're both gone and not gone, and you're neither gone nor not gone. That's a lot more non-dualistic, even if it is, what is that, right? That is exactly what is supposed to happen. That's the disruption of your fixed view. Yeah? Particularly interesting to me because it's many years since I first reflected whilst chanting the mantra that I found within it some transcendent sense of going beyond the going beyond. And I thought, well, that's not in it, but that's kind of what I think. All this going beyond. What about going beyond the going beyond? Yeah, that's probably why I ended up studying this stuff in the first place, I suppose. Kengo Harimoto quotes from a commentary on the Asta Sahasraka Prajnaparamita Sutra. Okay, Asta Sahasraka, 8,000. Ashta, 8, Sahasra, 1,000. So it just means the perfection of wisdom in 8,000 lines, the Sanskrit shlokas in which these things are written, yeah? This is from the commentary, and then I'll quote the sutra. Prajnaparamita is known not to stay on either this or that shore, nor in between them. If one knows that the different paths leading to her are the same, if you know that, yeah? Prajnaparamita is known not to stay on either this or that shore, nor in between them. If one knows that the different paths leading to her are the same, it is taught that she becomes far if one does not have skillful means, but she is very near if one is skilled. The actual sutra, the Sahasraka itself, says, Prajnaparamita does not stay on this shore or the other shore, nor does she stay in the middle of both, or afar from both. Well, that's what Harimoto cites that, of course, in support of his argument. It's actually, she's everywhere and nowhere, baby, in the words of the song, I suppose. Yeah? It's not a place in that sense. Yeah? The main takeaway here, I think, is that wisdom is a direct experience. If it's wisdom proper, it can be approached through the skillful use of subtle dialectical logic, which is basically what the Madhyamaka is for. But the only useful purpose of dialectic in the end is to provide a bridge between the mundane and the direct experience of the sublime. Once that is reached, all the means by which it was reached are dissolved. It is not here or there or neither or both. It just is. The purpose of this analysis has not been to explode the Heart Sutra, but rather to remember that the Heart Sutra itself is an explosion, and to keep it on exploding. If we think that we really know what's going on in the Heart Sutra, then it's time to lay some dynamite. Thanks. Finished that one on time.
Thank you very much.